All right, on this video, we're going to be cutting and buffing our 69 Firebird, trying to bring our paint, our new paint, fresh paint, and smooth it out and give it that show car finish. This is some of the stuff we're going to use. We're going to be starting with 1,000. I would say your wet sanding and your cutting and buffing could be anywhere from 800 all the way up to 5,000. Work your way up in 200 grit increments. So like I said, we're going to end up finishing with this 5,000, which is really nothing. If you're doing a street car, I don't think you have to worry about 3,000 or 5,000. You could jump right from 2,500 to the buffing phase. That should be good enough. But that's our sandpaper. We're going to be wet sanding. We're using Dawn dish soap and in a bucket of water. We got clean towels, not to wipe any more scratches on it. And then our buffing pad, same thing, is going to be a step-up system. I got them off Amazon, and we're going to use the 3M buffing system to bring this paint back to life. So that's some of the tools we're going to use. I also got a paint depth gauge. We're going to turn this on, and I'll show you what we're working with on the car. This, you don't need this. This is an insurance policy. So let's work our way over to the car, and I'll show you what we got. This car, being that it was too hot, we went and we put an extra, pretty much 2 coats of clear. It was 1 coat, but we laid it on thick, knowing we're going to be doing a lot of cutting and buffing. So I'm going to go take you over to the paint, this part of the car, and the trunk has not been cut and buffed. What we're going to do, we want it to end up like this. You can see how much smoother it is with the paint. We're going to take some readings on the old metal. So we're about 11, 11.3. And I'm going on the edges that was 10 because that's where we're not going to, build up. I know there's not any filler. This is reading primer and everything. So there's 12.2, 11.3. This is mils. So clear coat is about 1 to 3 mils on a normal vehicle of clear coat. Where we're going to get to when we're done sanding, we're on 8. So we took about 3 mils off this car, and like I said, there's 13. We didn't really take too much off. 10. So that's about where we are. We're taking about 3 mils, 2 mils off. How much that is? 4 mils is a sheet of paper. Right here's the calibration gauge, and you could see, just to show you, to calibrate the thing, that's 0. We're on metal. Now, right here, I believe. Right there is 2 mils. I don't know if you could zoom in and see how thin that is. I mean, it's just blowing in the wind. So the idea behind the wet sanding, and I got another calibration gauge, this is 9 mils. So right there, that's 9 mils. So that's probably how thick our clear coat is if you add our base coat, primer, and everything else. So with this whole process, just take it easy. Use low grit. And then you want to you'll see when we start the sanding process, you don't want to dig into this car. Also, you want to know your body work. I know I'm going to show you a couple shots of this car in the paint booth and what we're working with. And I know the base coat was smooth. So let's take a look at those. Here are a few pictures of the final 600 grit wet sanding on the car prior to going in the paint booth. Well, I'm just showing you this to show you the body work and the foundation of a good paint job. It starts right here at this phase. After that, we put a sealer coat on it to even out there's a couple bare metal spots here and there, different things of filler and the different levels of primer. After that comes your base coat. You can see the base coat of this car lay down real smooth. The temperature was still a lot lower and ideal painting. Here we are with the first coat of clear. You can see it's already starting to orange peel a little bit as the temp was climbing. This shows our temperature in the paint booth got to 129 degrees at its hottest point, and when we pulled the car out, you could see it has a little bit of orange peel and some of the shines just out of it because of the orange peel. So we're going to knock all that down and get this thing smooth. Here's our wet dry sanding blocks. There's certain blocks I'm going to use for major body work, filler, things like that. I'm mostly a metal guy, but we have these. We've done paint, obviously. We've done them in the past. We brought them back to life. So certain blocks I like for wet sanding. I'm going to probably start the 1,000. On this block, it's flat, and since the whole car was blocked down, when we block it, we're going to keep the car blocking flat. In my opinion, you don't want to do this with especially your hands. You're going to put valleys and gullies in the car, and the paint, it's going to look real wavy. I see a lot of people do it by everything we're doing by hand with machines. I think it's possible, but again, the whole car was hand blocked. I'm going to finish off and take that last little bit with the hand block and not to ruin the straightness of the car. So I'm going to start out with 1,000 with this block. I do really like the soft block and this for curves. And then I'm also going to use this on 1,000. The door blocks are real good. So I'm going to start here, and then when we start to 1,500, you'll probably see me more on these blocks. So let's go over here. What we're trying to accomplish here, you can see here's some paint too on the car that it looks all right. It just, you can see the orange peel in the light. So we're gonna get rid of that. And when you see this, it'll be all smooth. So the goal on the car is ultimately, hopefully your body filler, your body is smooth. Your metal work, then your sealer lays smooth, your paint, everything's smooth. What we're doing, we have our clear coat. This is obviously blown up like that. That's your orange peel. So what we're going to do, we're going to take our grit of sandpaper and we're going to start sanding. So if it's really bad, 800 is going to cut faster, but what you don't want to do is start cutting down to that lower level. Okay? What you want to do, the ultimate goal, what I feel, is you want to cut down to about right there, and then you start finishing it off with your other sandpaper. Now, saying that, what you don't want is if you have bad body work, and I know this car, like I said, that's why I said you got to know the history of the car. If filler is done like that and everything on top of it starts laying on top of the filler like that, and your thing starts orange peeling, when you start cutting down, you're going to have more clear in this area. So it's very deceiving. If you cut down, you might have spots breaking through. So preparation of the car, again, a smooth car is key here. So enough of the talking, let's start blocking the car. So over here, we'll start, and I'll do a little bit, and I'll speed it up, and we'll show you the difference on the different grits on half the trunk. I'm not going to tape it. I don't want to ruin the paint on the car. So we'll just kind of go here and then blend it. So we're going to start. I got a bucket of water. I got my air. And what I like to do, I like to just wrap it around for a tight fit. This goes for all my blocks. And I realize there's some blocks sticking out. The block's not going to hurt the car. So we'll wrap it tight. I like lots of water. I'll soak this car and I'll keep it. I'll be drenched by the time I'm done with the door and stuff. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go just like I'm sanding in normal blocking method. And you see the first couple cuts are going to be the hardest because, we're taking the most off of it. So just get the paper real wet. And if you're using 800, it's going to be even, try to cut more. And you can hear it cut. What you want to do too, you want to really listen. You don't want music in the background, because if you catch a piece of dirt or something in here, it's going to be, you're going to hear it, and you don't want to scratch the car more. So I'm applying slight pressure. Got to keep wrapping the paper. Now, once you get this thing smooth, you'll see this is going to go a lot slicker. The initial part of this is just the hardest part to get going. Like I said, I'm starting out with a big block because I don't want to promote waves or anything. And I'm two hands, keeping it flat, and I'm going with the body lines. You could go side to side. At this point, it's irrelevant. You see, it's already getting a little bit slicker. So I've been doing this car for a while now. I think I got about 2 hours on each fender. I would say if you're unsure, you want to keep checking it. I'll show you how to check it in a minute. We'll do a little bit more. We'll check it, and then I'll just go with the process. So water it down. Clean up your paper. Go again. And see, a lot of this is by feel too. Once you start blocking, you know how it feels. You've been doing it for a while. You could feel when you start getting the highs out of it. You can see around the edges, I'm still gripping in it. I'm going to go around the edges with a smaller block that's a little more flexible, because we're not really getting this corner right, and I don't want to put too much pressure here trying to roll it. And to me, what I was saying about doing it by with the pneumatically and with the tools is, I don't think you get the feel to get a proper cut on the car, personally. So we'll stop here in a minute, see what we got. So that's cutting right there. That seems a good stopping point. Now, I'm going to wipe the dirt off of it. And this is how you check it every time. So we're going to take our dry, lint-free cloth. And then, to speed up the drying process, be loud for so take some air. All right, so now that it's dry, you can see the spots that we still need to block. See where it's still dark right there? That would be an area that still needs to come down. You can see these areas now we're taking the highs off. You can see we stopped there, we stopped there. So we'll go ahead and I'll put you in a high speed, and we'll go ahead and keep blocking this car, and we'll finish with the 1000 and then start with the next grit. So for time's sake, we'll go ahead and speed up the rest of the sanding process on the 1000 grit. We're just, again, using our soapy water, back and forth movements. You could see I switched to the smaller Dura block that had a little more flex, especially around the curved edges. The longer block just was pushing too hard on the corners. I'm going back and forth, up and down. It doesn't, just don't go in circular motions. You don't want to burn holes. So long blocking back and forth, side to side, that's fine. Go with the body curves. And just while you're blocking, think about not trying to put waves in the car and just blending it. You don't have to take all the clear coat down in one area if that area is smooth, but if you're working around an edge, blend it back in just so you don't have any imperfections or the lights reflecting off of it different because of the different clear coat levels. So we check it with the air. We found a couple more spots. We're back at it, sanding. You see this is just this is going to take the longest out of all the sanding. Here are a couple side-by-side shots of the 1000 grit sanded next to the original what we started with, and you could see how much smoother it's already getting. Alright, so we're done with the 1000 grit. We're on to the 1500 grit. You could still see a couple spots. We can barely see some of the low spots in here that didn't cut through. We're trying to work it down slowly, and don't take it all the way down. I mean, the more you take down, you're burning off the clear. If there's one or two spots here or there, you're going to still get that gloss-like look. You're never going to see it unless you're like really looking for it. And on this car, well, we'd rather have the clear coat to protect the base coat from the sun. So I also switched up my blocks. I'm going to come to the yellow block a little bit. I feel like it's just an easier thing to just work on the paint, the curvature. I'll probably start with this, and then I'll work my way to this soft foam after that. Saying that, we got our 1500 out here. It's the same process. Gonna wrap around the block, and we're just kind of mostly at this point, now that we're done with 1000, we're just trying to get the previous scratches out of the sandpaper. So we'll go ahead and start blocking this again. We'll speed up the video and just keep continuing what we're doing. I'm not going to touch that part of the car just so we have a side-by-side comparison. So here we go. So as I said, now that we're on to the 1500, it goes a lot smoother now that we did all the rough cutting on most of the orange peel. We're basically at this point just smoothing down
what we initially started and getting rid of the 1,000 grit scratches. The process is exactly the same as far as I'm going side to side, back to back. I'm blowing out the water when I think I have a good point, and I'm checking my work just to make sure I don't see any more scratches. Everything looks level, even, and uniform. This is an easier process, I think, because you're not actually cutting unlevel ground. Everything should be level. And this is about what it looks like, the difference between the 1,000 and the 1,500.
Now we're on to the 2,000 grit. You could see it's getting a little bit smoother with the 1,500 versus 1,000. Very slight difference is what you're going to see on each grit. That's why we're going to keep this spot again to compare to what we're trying to get to and what we started with. So we'll do again half the trunk, 2,000 grit. With this one, I'm sticking with the completely soft block. I think it's going to work better. I think now the harder blocks at this point are going to try to, put too many gouges in it. Also, I didn't say it earlier, this goes through all of them. I know the car, so now we'll start doing it. But especially, you want to stay and keep looking at your sandpaper. Make sure you don't have your base coat. So we should not see any blue. What we're cutting off is completely 100% clear. And that's what you should see, kind of grayish film where you should see it, maybe some white on there. But definitely, if you see your base coat, you've gone too far. That's where this is. Maybe try it on a test panel first if you don't know the car, or an area that you don't mind clear coating. So let's get back to it with the 2,000 grit. Same process. Each one of these goes a little bit easier, and I wouldn't say it's quicker, but the process, you don't have to go through it as much. Like I said, we're still just trying to take now we're taking the 1,500 grit sand scratches out, and this is so small you can't really see it. Again, this is kind of a feel thing. I mean, you can look, you'll see it when we compare our two panels side by side, our two sides of the trunk, the slight difference between the two grits. I mean, you'll see it there, but as far as knowing when to stop, I'd say you just got to look down, make sure you don't see any inconsistencies in the panel when it's dry.
Since this is a repetitive process, we're going to go ahead and speed up most of the sanding on this 2,000 grit. Same thing, side to side, front to back. This process just goes on and on again. Just when you feel that thing start gliding and you don't feel like the sandpaper's gouging it anymore, it's usually time to stop. Here's a difference, very slight difference again, even less than the last picture.
Okay. We just finished the 2,000 grit sandpaper, and it's really looking smooth. I mean, you can really feel when you rub your hand over it, this thing feels like glass. It's beautiful. So now we're just trying to bring the shine back before our buffing and compounding. So we're going to go down to 2,500 now. Same block, same process. Let me get my 2,000 grit out of there so I don't mix it up. That would suck. So right now we're on 2,500 grit, wet dry paper. We're on that yellow block. Like I said, that's my favorite block to use, especially on parts like this. We're gonna wet it up. And same process. You can see when we start sanding this goes a lot easier. I'm doing very slight pressure. Like I said, we're just almost buffing it out at this point. We check our paper, make sure there's no base coat on here, it's only clear coat.
One other piece of advice while we're going over this, make sure your bucket of water is clean, that you're not dipping in dirt and everything. I was changing it out, I don't know, every 2-3 panels I'll kind of wash the bucket, get some fresh soap in there, fresh water. Just because, man, you don't want it, you're basically washing that rag off with all the dirt and debris coming off this car back into the bucket. So that's some useful information while we're doing this too. Here's the last picture of the 2,500 versus the 2,000. You could barely see the difference, but it is smoother.
All right, so we're done with the 2,500 grit. We got the 3,000, 5,000. It's going to be the same process, so I'm not going to show you that. Plus, I got a couple more parts on the car and the small parts to still finish up before I do the 3,000 at once, 5,000 at once. So we'll go ahead and there's a couple more things. Like I said, I'm going to finish off. we're gonna soap and wash this whole car and make sure it's perfectly clean before we start the buffing phase. But you see already, we're starting to come back with a little bit of shine. And if you look down the side of it, I mean, you could see what we did here and how straight the car is. Another thing too, I don't know if you could see, I didn't do any of the body lines. I didn't sand them on the corners. This will burn off real quick. We'll take care of that on the small polishing phase. I'm not even gonna touch that on the wool pad phase. So try not to get your corners and just kind of roll off into them. You could also tape your lines and that will help. So yeah, you could see the car is straight. There's no waves in it. That's why we do it by hand and we're using blocks. Now, one more thing we're also going to do is we trimmed out the car, and I don't know if you can see it, there's a paint line from where we trimmed from when we did the body paint until the door jamb paint, and it goes all the way down. We're going to go through and take 2000 grit, start there, and we're going to blend those two just so there's not a rough mark, and then that will just clean up this just a little bit more. The door jambs don't have to be wet sanded. They came out really good. But we'll go ahead and, like I said, feather them in and blend it. So at this point, like I said, we'll finish this off today, and then tomorrow we'll come back, wash it first thing in the morning, hopefully be ready to buff by the afternoon. All right.
In this picture, I got the front end in 5,000 and doors back in the 2,500. You can really see the difference. This Trizec 3000, 5000 sandpaper, it has its own backing pad, so I just used the palm of my hand and then still did the same blocking method. You can really see, once I got the car in 5000, it actually started buffing it and put a little bit of a shine. I mean, this really is going to save on the compounding time, and you'll see in the future how fast it does go.
All right, so we got our wool buffing pad on our buffer. We're using step 1 on the 3M system, part number 36060. It's the rubbing compound. So I'm going to show you what we did. We did most of the car, and we're going to do the trunk and continue, and then we'll do the upper tray last, just to show you a comparison. So with this, I just squirt a little on the trunk. We'll work it in, and we're going to be at we're at 1200 RPMs, and we should start seeing the polish come out of this a little bit now, a little bit of a shine. So we'll go slow, we'll rub it in. Now about half throttle right now. And you kind of want to go away from the edges. Be careful with the wool pad. And there we are. We're at 1200 RPM.
What you have to remember, especially the wool pad, is you're producing lots of heat and you're just basically smoothing the top layer of the clear coat over. If you're unsure, do a little bit at a time and move fast, and do not stay in one spot or you might damage your paint.
We'll come back through and get the edges with the DA next. You don't want to work the edges with the wheel. It cuts too much, I think. So we'll come back. You'll see the next step with the orange pad and a DA on the same compound. That's going to finish this off. But you see the shine it's already putting in this thing. Alright, we're using the same rubbing compound we used with the wool pad, except now we're on the orange buffer pad on the DA. To me, the DA is just going to smooth it out and not be as aggressive, and all the work we did with this car, it just gives it a little bit finishing touch. On the camera, you're probably not going to see anything. However, you could see when you look down it, some of the fine scratches are gone. It's just that much cleaner for when we move on to step 2. So let's go do the trunk, and I'll show you how I do this. I'm going to stick a pad in there just because I want to get the edges a little bit better. So same thing, actually, let me unhook that. We'll put a little bit on it. Same thing, put a little bit on it, we'll rub it in. All right. And this is going to let me focus around the edges and everything. pressure than the buffer pad, but we're going a little bit faster, but I'm as slow as the DA will go, and I'm about half on it, and I'll speed up a little as I go along.
I just want to clarify, I'm stepping down on this step. You don't have to do it. This is just cleaning up the car and the edges and just making it a little bit smoother so our next two steps go even easier and we don't have to use the buffing wheel.
It's hard to see, but this just gave it that much of a better finish. It cleaned up the edges a little bit better, and it just, we got a little bit of swirl marks if you look down it and you just see it, but you have to really look for them. I mean, step two, that's what we're ahead of the game. And actually, what we're going to do, there's a yellow pad and a blue pad. We're skipping the yellow pad, which is the next step. If this car was worse, and I think if we didn't do all the hand sanding, we would have to use the yellow pad. But right now, we're going to use step two on the blue pad before the polishing compound. So there it is. All right, we're on stage two. 06094. It's the machine polish blue pad. Like I said, we skipped the yellow pad. We already did most of the car. The pad's kind of loaded up, so it was working better before, but you see it really shined up this car. I don't know if you can tell the difference between the trunk and this, but you could really tell. So let's get to it. Gonna use the DA again. Put a little bit on there. I probably put too much, but it's all right. And we're going to just work this in all the way. Speed has increased on this once I get set.
This step can also be accomplished with the electric buffer using the black 3M polishing wheel on it. I like the DA. I think it's less intrusive at this point, and the car already looked really good.
There we go. We worked it in. Let me get a fresh rag. Let's wipe it down. Man, it took all the scratches out and everything. So next step, we're on to step three. All right, we're on to the last step on our 3M three-step system. We're using the ultra-fine machine polish 06068. So we want the blue top, step three. I'm using a black buffer pad. 3M uses the blue one if you stick with their whole system, but this is an ultra-fine pad. It's the softest one in that whole series. I didn't really think I need this one, but we're just going to do it just because we're going to follow it, and I guess it gets it a little bit better. You can barely see it, but if there is any finite swirl marks or anything, this is going to take care of it. Put it on heavy. Don't buff it dry. Leave it wet and then wipe it with a rag. You're probably going to go through rags a lot more as the rags just soak up and they stay wet on the rag. So let's get to it.
So while we're finishing up, the biggest piece of advice I can give you is just take your time. The more effort you put into this thing and the more you just focus on what you're doing and step things down, really the better the final outcome's going to get. So just remember that as you're doing this.
All right, we're wrapping the cutting and buffing up on the 6.9 Firebird. As you can see, it's pretty smooth and slicked off. There's a couple spots we'll get to. What I did after that last coat, I didn't put it on there. I just went over some quick wax just to get any residue off the car, the splatter and everything else. It was easy doing that. And wax and grease remover for all the seams and everywhere wax got stuck in. So let's do a quick walk around of the car, show what we got. You could see the preparation in the body work and how there's no waves in the car. And that's why I told you I like to do all the blocking by hand. I think on the level of these old cars, it just does better. If this was an auto body shop where we're turning out 50, 100 cars every day, yeah, we'll just do the 1,500, 2,000 grit, 3,000 grit on a DA. But for this level of car, I think it's worth it spending extra time. There's a couple spots we'll still address. You could probably see in the video. I talked to the owner, and from the start, this was supposed to be a daily driver car that he can go anywhere, have fun in, not worry about. So I think we've accomplished that. I also think that he can go to a show, take it, and not be embarrassed. The car's going to look great in a show. It's going to do really well. And like I said, we'll talk about the couple spots and address a few other issues just because I want to build a nice car. But this is not the only way to do it. This obviously worked for us. You saw what we started with and what we come in. I wish I could get out in the sunlight. It's been raining ever since we painted this car, so this is what we're stuck in. If you hang out with or come back in a couple weeks, I'm going to try to do another video on this car from the paint, from the start to finish, just the quick process of the blocking and everything. So when we do that, I'm going to try to get the bumpers on the car, and we'll try to drive it out in the sunlight so you can see a little better. So check back for that. Thank you for sticking along. Like I said, there's tons of ways to do this. This works for us. It can work for you. Hopefully it helped you along the way. Like, comment, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you again. Thank you for your time.